Hello, and welcome to the MIMOSA Matters podcast series. In this series, we will bring you interesting perspectives on the clinical, research, and technological perspectives for near-infrared spectroscopy imaging, or NIRS, and introduce you to MIMOSA Diagnostics. I'm your host, Douglas Queen. Today, we are bringing you a MIMOSA Matters Poster Chat, where you can learn from our collaborators about their important research. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on today's podcast. We will be hearing from Christine Handley, Regional Director of RestorixHealth in Framingham in the US. Christine is a registered nurse with 15 years executive leadership experience. She's held varied positions in ambulatory surgery, physicians' offices, and hospitals. This includes inpatient, OR, ER, and psychiatric leadership positions. Welcome, Christine.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
Great, thanks. Let me start our conversation by asking you a few questions about your poster entitled Integrating Multispectral Near-Infrared Spectroscopy and Thermography Imaging into the Management of Diabetic Foot Ulcers and Venous Ulcers Treated with Skin Substitutes, such that our listeners can get some insight into your experience with NIRS imaging.
Great.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your clinical practice and experience.
With the camera. So we bought the camera in, I'm going to say almost 2 years ago now. I got excited about the camera for probably some different reasons than other people get excited about the camera. But I really liked it because of the education that you could give your patients and your doctors. And so when we first were trialing the camera, interestingly, on the very first day we trialed the camera, I showed the images to one of my docs who didn't believe in hyperbaric medicine. And he was like, wow, like you could see the oxygenation of the tissue. And it convinced him that hyperbarics was doing something, because it shows you, the camera shows you what you can't see with the naked eye. And so when you're doing hyperbaric medicine, and that's just one piece of this, but you can't really see the changes day to day. But when you can see in the camera the changes in the colors that show you the changes in the oxygenation, it's something visual that helps you to believe. And so this doc decided to send us hyperbaric patients at that point. He was like, okay, you convinced me. And so that's how I got excited about the camera, because I think it shows people what they can't see on that day to day. And so we use it for educating doctors and helping them understand what happens behind the scenes. And we use it for our patients as well. So we've used it to increase compliance for our patients who, if you show them day to day what that picture looks like, and then what it looks like if they skip 4 days, they can see that they've lost ground, which has really helped our patient compliance increase by a lot. Like it was at 20% and now 50. So really big difference in the patient compliance. And like I said, educating the docs has just been a great thing.
Great, thanks. Give our listeners some background into the study featured in your recent poster at the SAWC Spring conference.
Yeah, so when the camera was approved as a vascular study in the new LCD, which has been put on hold, but nonetheless, that finally people are starting to see the value that this camera has. And so we have many ways to evaluate the patient if you're using skin subs, which is kind of where we were going with this most recent poster. What happens when you use a skin sub, and how can you tell that that's working? Because Medicare wants proof that you are improving the patient. And sometimes that's not as easy as just measuring a wound, right? The wounds are very deep, and there's lots of different ways to prove that it's working that are not as visible to the naked eye as you might think. And so this camera gave us one other way to show that the cells that are being delivered to the wounds because of the skin sub are now visible. So we can see the new oxygenation to the wound, and the camera also measures the wound. So there's many reasons why the camera is great for this study. But when I was asked to do a poster this time, I thought, okay, let's do something a little different, and let's show why this camera is so important to the future of skin sub use, as they're making it more difficult to get them approved. It's not that I think the new LCD is bad. It's that it's making us prove why we're using them. Why are we spending this money on our patients, and what is it doing for our patients? And so that's what I wanted to do with this study, is prove with pictures, one over another every time they had a skin sub, that you could see the difference. And so even if it wasn't shrinking quite as much as you might have thought it might, there's a difference. It's doing what that skin sub is supposed to do. It's calling the cells to help heal that wound, and that's visible with the camera.
Great. And how important is the documentation aspect from the MIMOSA Pro with respect to proving that skin subs work?
Huge. Huge. So again, in this new LCD that they're coming out with, they're asking for, after four applications, proof, documentation that it's working. The MIMOSA camera gives you a report that you can send to the insurance companies, or have in your chart, that shows the pictures that you took, the pictures you previously took, what's the difference, and then gives you a report saying what it's doing. And so when Medicare is saying, okay, we want proof that it's working, you can take that MIMOSA documentation and send it in and say, this is how it's working. Very obvious changes in temperature, in oxygenation, so you can see all that. And again, it measures the wound, so you can see those measurements in the MIMOSA camera picture. Very easily done, and it shows you that it is shrinking in size, shrinking in depth, like all the things they're looking for, and then proof that that wound bed is becoming more healthy.
Great, thanks. And what was the outcome of your study in the poster?
So all positive. So exactly what I set out to do is exactly what we saw. So the pictures week over week show that increased oxygenation and temperature changes that are indicative of the healing wound versus, infection or other things. So it showed everything we wanted to see. The pictures week over week were very helpful. The reports were helpful. Again, the LCD was delayed again until the fall at this point. But this has given us the way to reevaluate these wounds easily and be able to show them to our patients and to our doctors to prove that the products we're using are working.
Great. And how did NIRS imaging help with this study?
The tissue analytics helps, and the temperature helps. Like, all the different pieces of the camera have given us an idea of what's going on with that wound to show the healing. And so I think the week over week images are very important. It's taking one picture shows you a moment in time. Taking week over week pictures shows you that healing week over week over week, and it gives you all of the different pieces you're looking for. Like I said, the oxygenation is kind of what I thought the camera was all about when we started using it, and then now you can see this temperature change, and it shows all of these different pieces. And again, just a regular picture that shows you the measurements and all the pieces.
Great, thanks. And what is the key message of the poster that you would share with your clinical colleagues?
I was trying to show that the camera is really important to the future of wound care. I've been a huge fan of the camera since we started using it, but after they gave approval for the camera to be that vascular study, so we use all kinds of vascular studies, right? We use ABIs, we use all kinds of different ways to evaluate. We measure the leg, like there's a million different things that we're doing, but the camera is such a simple way to kind of give all the information you want. Sometimes an ABI is not possible because the wound is right where you'd start, you know what I mean? So sometimes the ABI is not the easiest. The camera is always available and easy and works, right? So, and I have some docs that are not huge fans of the ABIs. They don't think they're as accurate as they can be. So the camera gives another option to have documentation in your chart that shows you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. Skin subs are only allowed to be used if you have certain results, and that's always been an ABI result, 0.8, 0.7. But like I said, sometimes they're not as accurate as they can be. The camera gives you another way to document and show progress. And as I said in the very beginning, my enthusiasm for this camera has been more about teaching the docs and the patients about their own healing. When they can see a picture that was taken of their own wound and they can see difference week to week, they're more likely to pay a copay to get a skin sub, or come weekly to get those skin subs, or come weekly to get a debridement. It really gives them something to hang their hat on. Like, I saw the healing, I can see it. It's hard. You got a wound on the bottom of your foot. You can't see your foot. You can't feel your foot because you're a diabetic. And now you've got a picture that shows you exactly what you're dying to see after having this wound for 6 months, right? So huge for education for me. And same with the docs. Like, okay, we're using these skin subs. Some docs believe in the skin subs, some docs are not so interested in them. But if you can show the changes and the growth, or the lack of growth of the wound, the healing of the wound, it makes a huge difference. So we were able to show that the camera does give you the information you need to prove to the insurance companies and to prove to your patients and docs that they're working.
Great, thanks. So,
Sure.
thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Christine, for giving our listeners an in-depth insight into NIRS imaging, MIMOSA Pro, and its utility in clinical practice. Well, that's our poster chat for today. We hope you've gained some new perspectives on NIRS imaging and its utility in wound management. Be sure to visit Mimosa Diagnostics at www.mimosadiagnostics.com and visit our social media channels. Add your comments and learnings. We want to hear from you.